Hey everybody, in today's video I'm going to show you how you can calculate returns on Google Sheets, stock returns, from if you had invested into a stock or an index, let's say 10, 20, or 30 years ago. I'm doing this because I see a lot of articles relating to this seem to be popular, so I just want to show you how you can do these sorts of calculations yourself in Google Sheets. And if you want, I also have a template that you can download. Just follow the link related to this video. But I'm going to show you how we can set this up from scratch in Google Sheets. So for starters, any good template, you want to have some inputs that a user enters in, whether it's you or somebody else. So in this example, I'm going to use one for the investment dollars. So let's say we want to say, how much money we're going to invest into a certain investment, whether it's a stock or an index. So in this example, I'm going to say $10,000. And I'm also going to indicate the index that I'm selecting that I want to say that I've invested into. Now, the tricky thing with some of these symbols on Google Sheets and using the Google Finance function is they're not always going to be obvious. Like if you want to pull in Amazon's stock ticker, stock price, you go to the Google Finance function, type in Amazon, and price as the ticker, right? So simple enough, you just use the ticker. But when you're talking about indexes like Dow Jones, the NASDAQ, S&P 500, they're not, they don't all work the same way. So for example, here on Google Finance, we've got the Dow Jones Industrial Average. You'll notice it's got .dji, so that's what we use to reference that. Some of these you might be familiar with if you try to reference these on Yahoo Finance or Google Finance, like the NASDAQ is .ixIC, right? Simple enough. But there's going to be more obscure ones that maybe you're not going to be as familiar with. Let's say the Toronto Stock Exchange, or the S&P TSX Composite. That's normally what they use for the Toronto Stock Exchange. So you can see that uses a symbol of OSPTX, no dot in front of it, right? So it's not always easy to know if you're not familiar with these or you don't normally look up these symbols. Like the Russell 2000, that's another key index, and you can see it uses RUT. If you're looking at UK, the FTSE 100, that is UKX. Right, so these are all different symbols that you could potentially use if you want to pull in these different indexes. So if you're not sure, just do a search in Google Finance to see what it relates to, and then use that in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an option to do a lookup here. So a drop-down option to select the index and the corresponding a symbol. So I've already created a table of this. I'm just going to paste in here as opposed to going through one by one. So these are the different symbols that I've already mapped out. So the idea being that you can select one of these options, and using a lookup will pull in the spreadsheet will pull in the corresponding symbol. So if I click on the data option, there's an option for data validation. This is where we can create a drop-down option. So I click on that and click add rule. There's an option for a criteria drop-down, so you can manually enter in these options, but why should you, right? You can just use a drop-down from a range. I'll click on that and click this button here to select from a range. And so I'm going to move this down and just select my range there. So obviously you could key it in or just select it, hit OK. Whole lot easier than you entering this all by yourself, especially if you've got a huge list. So now I've got my drop-downs in there. Easy enough to select one of them. And then the next thing I'm going to do is create a lookup function. This is just a simple VLOOKUP, reference the value right above, and I'm going to select all of column E and F. Just in case I add to this list, I don't want to have to worry about updating the range. I can just select the entire two columns. The index is going to be the second column because I want that symbol, and set it to false. And now we've got for Dow Jones.dji, for the S&P, we've got .inx, for the Russell 2000, we've got RUT. So we've got those in there, easy enough. So we've got the symbol. The next thing I'm going to do for an input is enter how many years ago I'm interested in looking back, right? So again, let's create a yellow background here for my input. And by default, I'm just going to say, okay, let's say I want to look back 10 years ago. How much would this $10,000 investment 10 years ago be worth today? That's what I'm aiming to calculate here. So I'm going to create a couple other outputs here. So these are my main inputs here. Now this is not an input, but I've highlighted these in yellow to say, okay, this is what should be changing. I've got the drop down. So these are the things that you can do to make your templates, whether they're in Google Sheets or Excel, make them more user-friendly, easier to know what should be updated. So I'm going to enter a couple more values or a couple more fields for previous value, the current value, then the percent return, and then today's investment. And so these are all going to be calculated values, so I'm not going to highlight these. So for the current value, it's really just using the Google Finance function. For the ticker, we're using that symbol right there from our lookup. And the attribute is just the price. Now, I'm not specifying any date, so it's just going to get the most recent value. So that's the value of the Russell 2000 as I'm doing this. Now, for the previous value, this is going to require a little bit more work because I need to calculate the date from 10 years ago, right? So it's not terribly complex, but I'm gonna do it here just to show you how that works. So I'm going to start by using the date function, and within the date function you can specify a year, a month, and a day. And so the year is going to be the main thing that I'm going to be manipulating here. And so the year also has a year function which will return the year from a given date. And I'm going to use the today function. So the today function returns today's date. So if I put that within the year function, it's going to return the current years. So I'm doing this in 2023. So the year value is going to be 2023 because it's pulling in today's value and then getting the year from that. And so if I want to work back 10 years, then I'm going to do minus, select this value here. That's the number of years I want to look back. And then what I'm going to do is then for the month function, now if you always wanted to start to looking back at the start of the year, you can just set this to month 1, day 1, and then you've got the first day, first month of the year. So as you can see, it's already telling me it would be January 1, 2013, going back 10 years, and the first day in the first month. So if you want it that way, you can set it up like that. But if you want it to be exactly 10 years, then you're going to want to use the month function as well to reference, again, the today function within that. And then the day function, again, the same sort of thing. We're putting the today function within everything, so we're always getting the current month, current day, and the current year. So I'm doing this video October 3rd, 2023, so my value for 10 years back is October 3rd, 2013. So you can see that is working properly, so it's going 10 years back. And so that's the key part of that calculation to make sure that I can reference the previous value correctly. So now I'm going to put this within the Google Finance function again. And for the Google Finance function, it starts out the same. I'm still going to reference that ticker, that symbol in that cell there. And then for the attribute, it's still going to be the price, but this time I'm going to specify my start date as being this value, October 3rd, 2013. Now, I can specify an end date, but instead I'm just going to set it to 1 because you can see it's an option here to specify an end date or the number of days. So I just want 1 day. I just want that day back 10 years ago. So I close this out, and you can see it gives me a value for October 3rd, 2013. As of the close at 4 p.m., that was the value of the Russell 2000. So this is good. The only issue here is I don't want to return this entire array. I just want this value here. And so because I'm always returning just a single day, this is always how it's going to look like. So I'm going to want the second row and the second column, which will put me here. So I'm going to specify that using the index function. So the index function takes that entire table that I've created, and I can specify that I want the second row and the second column. And now I've just got that amount. So now that that's all set up properly, I'm going to copy this and put it in here for my previous value calculation. So now if I want to calculate my return, I'm going to take the current value divided by the previous value and subtract 1. Sometimes people make mistakes and don't do the -1. This is important if you actually want to know your gain, right? Because this tells us the value of your investment went up by 61%. We don't want to say 161%. We don't want to include the original value. We want to say that it actually increased by 61%. So now the last part of this is to calculate what that investment would be worth today. To do that, we take our original investment, multiply that by a factor of 1 plus the gain. So now we're adding back that 1, and now we're adding the return. So now we've got $16,133. So if we invested $10,000 in the Russell 2000 10 years ago, this is what it would be worth today. This would be our return. Now, because we've got the drop down, we can easily change this to, let's say we want to look at the S&P 500, right? So now a 10,000 investment in that 10 years ago would be worth this much. So our returns are much greater at 151%. As you can see, it more than doubled in value, right? So by doing this, you can make your spreadsheet more versatile, and change whether you're looking at indexes, at tickers. You can do that as well. If you just want to use tickers, then obviously you don't need this drop down, and instead just have a spot for the ticker symbol. It'll work exactly the same way, except we don't need this lookup. But I just want to show you as far as how to do it both ways, in case you do want to have a lookup, in case you do want to have indexes that you want to track. Or the simpler method is just to get rid of this drop down and just simply enter this ticker symbol here and override it. But by doing this, you can do these calculations yourself just to easily work backwards and say, okay, what would it have been if I invested 10,000? What about 20,000? Right? So you can make these calculations on the fly and do them yourself really easily, and easily flip back and forth between investments, look back a different number of years, right? And those calculations will always update. So you've got a template you can easily do these calculations on. And if you don't want to create the template yourself, you can also download mine as well. So just follow the link related to this video. We'll have a post covering this, and you can download my template from there. So hope you found this template useful. Thanks so much for watching.